I understand, my child. It will be all right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mama. Always.
I take full responsibility for this, and I promise to be there for both of you. Yeah.
How can I trust you?
I will prove it to you, starting now.
Hi everyone, welcome to Us by Good or 10, where I find a real stories. It is not joking, it is a real stories. Before we start, make sure that you have subscribed, turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. A billionaire son who fell in love with a student after have got pregnant. Don't miss what will happen next in our tale. Sit back, relax, and we start.
The sun was rising slowly over the beautiful city of Abuja, casting a warm, golden glow across the wide streets and the tall glass buildings that made the capital city look so grand and modern. In one of the most beautiful neighborhoods of the city, inside a massive mansion that had shiny marble floors and giant gold gates, lived a handsome 30-year-old man named Mofe. Mofe was the only son of Chief Kola, a very famous and powerful 55-year-old billionaire who owned many successful companies all over Nigeria. Because his father was so wealthy, Mofe had been given the big responsibility of working as the main manager of one of the family's largest corporate offices right in the heart of Abuja. Every single morning, Mofe would wake up, put on his perfectly tailored dark blue suits, and drive his expensive sports car to his office, where everyone bowed to him and followed his orders. Even though Mofe had all the money, nice cars, and luxury that anyone could ever dream of, his heart often felt a little bit empty because he was tired of people only liking him for his family's wealth, and he truly wanted to find someone who would love him for exactly who he was on the inside. Far away from Mofe's quiet, wealthy neighborhood, on the other side of Abuja, where the streets were loud and filled with the sounds of honking cars and shouting traders, a completely different morning routine was taking place. In a small, humble house, a kind and incredibly hardworking 45-year-old single mother named Mrs. Ngozi was already awake long before the sun even showed its face in the sky. Mrs. Ngozi was a woman of great strength and dignity, and she made her living by selling fresh fish at a very busy, crowded, open-air market in the middle of the town. Her hands were rough from lifting heavy baskets of fish and ice every day, and her clothes always smelled like the ocean. But she never complained for even a single day because she had a beautiful goal that kept her moving forward. Her greatest joy in life was her lovely 25-year-old daughter, Adanna, who was currently a student at the prestigious Abuja Preparatory School. Mrs. Ngozi spent every single naira she earned from her fish business to pay for Adanna's expensive school fees, books, and uniforms because she wanted her daughter to have a bright future and a wonderful education that she herself never had the chance to receive when she was young. Adanna loved her mother more than anything else in the world, and she studied as hard as she could every single day to make sure that her mother's painful sacrifices would not be in vain. She was a very beautiful, quiet girl with neat braided hair who always wore her blue school uniform with pride, though she often felt a bit out of place among the other students who came from very wealthy families and arrived at school in big air-conditioned cars. One sunny afternoon, after a very long and tiring day of classes at Abuja Preparatory School, Adanna stepped out of the school gates to walk toward the main road to find a cheap public bus to take her home. At that exact same moment, Mofe was driving back from an important business meeting, looking out of his car window and feeling quite bored with his usual routine of meetings and paperwork. As his car slowed down near the school due to the heavy Abuja traffic, his eyes caught sight of Adanna standing by the roadside, and he was instantly struck by her natural beauty, her gentle smile, and the calm way she carried herself amidst the chaotic crowd. Mofe felt something pull tightly at his heart that he had never felt before, so he quickly told his driver to pull over to the side of the road so that he could step out and talk to her. When Mofe walked up to Adanna and greeted her with a polite, humble smile, Adanna was a bit surprised and shy because she could see that he was an important, wealthy man, but his voice was so kind and gentle that she could not help but smile back at him. They stood by the busy roadside for a long time, talking about simple things like the weather, her studies at the school, and how beautiful the Abuja sky looked that afternoon. And Mofe purposely did not mention that his father was a billionaire because he wanted her to see him as just a regular man. Adanna found herself laughing at his gentle jokes, and she was deeply impressed by how polite and respectful he was, which was very different from the arrogant, wealthy boys she sometimes met at school. Before they parted ways that evening, Mofe asked for her phone number, and as he drove away, both of them could not stop thinking about each other, feeling a beautiful spark of love that had suddenly ignited in their hearts. Over the next few months, their casual meeting blossomed into a deep, beautiful romance as Mofe and Adanna began to see each other regularly after her classes were over for the day. Mofe would take her to quiet, hidden parks in Abuja, where they could sit under the shade of green trees, sharing cheap snacks and talking for hours about their dreams, their favorite foods, and their childhood memories. Adanna told him all about her wonderful mother who sold fish in the market, and instead of being ashamed or looking down on her, Mofe listened with deep respect and admiration for Mrs. Ngozi's incredible hard work and love. Mofe felt happier and more at peace with Adanna than he had ever felt in his giant, lonely mansion, and Adanna felt completely safe and deeply cherished whenever she was wrapped in Mofe's warm embrace. They fell deeply in love with each other, completely forgetting about the vast differences in their social backgrounds and ignoring the fact that one belonged to the world of billionaires while the other belonged to the world of market sellers. However, their beautiful, secret world of pure happiness was suddenly changed forever on a quiet Tuesday afternoon when Adanna began to feel very unusual, experiencing strange waves of dizziness and nausea during her morning classes. She tried to ignore the strange feelings and drink some water, but when the sickness continued for several days, a quiet voice of worry began to whisper in her mind. With a trembling hand, she went to a small pharmacy near the school and bought a simple pregnancy test kit, taking it into the quiet privacy of the school restroom, while her heart pounded loudly against her chest like a drum. She waited for a few long, terrifying minutes that felt like an eternity, staring down at the little plastic stick until two bright red lines slowly appeared right before her eyes. Adanna looked down at the positive test result, feeling a giant mix of deep, unconditional love for the tiny life growing inside her, but also a sudden, intense fear about what this would mean for her education, her future, and her mother's painful sacrifices. Adanna sat frozen on the cold floor of the school restroom for what felt like hours, staring at the two bold lines on the test kit as tears began to stream silently down her face because she knew that the heavy burden of this secret was far too big for her to carry alone. She carefully packed her books into her school bag with trembling hands, skipped her remaining afternoon classes, and walked out of the gates of Abuja Preparatory School with a heavy heart, her feet moving automatically toward the one place she always found comfort. The journey to the bustling Utako market felt longer and noisier than usual, and as she stepped into the crowded, muddy walkways filled with the loud shouting of traders and the strong, familiar smell of fresh fish, her heart sank even deeper at the sight of her mother. There was Mrs. Ngozi, wiping sweat from her brow with a faded wrapper, smiling warmly as she wrapped fish in old newspapers for a customer, her tired eyes lighting up with pure pride the moment she looked up and spotted her beautiful daughter walking toward her table. Mrs. Ngozi immediately noticed the pale, troubled look on Adanna's face, so she quickly excused herself from her customers, wiped her scales clean, and pulled her daughter into a quiet corner behind the wooden fish stalls where the loud noise of the market was slightly muffled. Adanna looked into her mother's loving, worn face and broke down into deep, uncontrollable sobs, her voice shaking completely as she confessed the entire truth about her secret romance with Mofe and the pregnancy test she had just taken. The shock hit Mrs. Ngozi like a physical blow, making her lean against the wooden wall for support as her mind raced through the memories of all the early mornings she had suffered, the cold ice that bit her fingers, and the heavy baskets she carried just to give her daughter a proper education. For a moment, the heartbroken mother wept silently for the dreams she thought were shattered. But as she looked at her frightened, trembling child, her deep maternal instinct and fierce love took over her grief, and she tightly wrapped her strong arms around Adanna, whispering that they would face this storm together no matter what happened. Once the initial shock and tears had passed, Mrs. Ngozi wiped her daughter's face with her cloth and insisted that they must act with dignity and courage, because the father of the child needed to know the truth immediately so they could see what kind of man he truly was. Adanna was terrified that Mofe might abandon her or deny the baby because of his wealthy background, but her mother insisted that hiding in fear would solve nothing, so they packed up the fish stall early for the day and washed their hands clean. Together, side by side, the fish seller and the schoolgirl boarded a commercial bus that took them away from the loud market and brought them straight into the highbrow commercial district of Abuja, where the giant corporate headquarters of Mofe's family company stood tall against the blue sky. Walking into the grand, air-conditioned lobby filled with shiny marble and security guards, Mrs. Ngozi held her daughter's hand firmly, refusing to be intimidated by the wealthy surroundings as she walked straight up to the front desk and politely but firmly demanded to see the young manager. The sophisticated receptionist looked at Mrs. Ngozi's simple market clothes with a judgmental stare and tried to turn them away, but the fierce determination in the mother's eyes made the worker hesitate and ring the manager's private office upstairs instead. Up in his luxurious suite, Mofe was sitting at his massive mahogany desk reviewing financial reports, but the moment he heard Adanna's name over the intercom, he dropped his expensive pen and commanded his secretary to send them up to his office immediately without any delay. When the heavy wooden doors opened, Mofe stood up quickly and walked over to welcome them, his heart beating fast with a mixture of confusion and deep concern, because he had never seen Adanna look so completely terrified, nor had he ever met her famous hardworking mother before this moment. Mrs. Ngozi stood tall in the middle of the luxurious office, looking Mofe straight in the eyes to judge his character, before gently stepping back to let her daughter speak the words that would change all of their lives forever. Adanna took a deep, shaky breath, holding tightly to her mother's hand for strength, and in a soft, trembling voice that was barely above a whisper, she told Mofe that she was carrying his child. The bright office suddenly became completely silent as the words hung heavily in the air, and Mofe stood entirely frozen in place, his eyes wide with utter amazement as he looked from Adanna's tearful face down to her hands, and then back up to her mother's watchful, protective gaze. A million thoughts rushed through Mofe's mind all at once, including the sudden realization of his heavy responsibility, the beautiful future he truly wanted with Adanna, and the massive, angry storm that would surely break loose when his proud billionaire father found out about this situation. Mofe looked up from his massive office desk, completely shocked as Adanna and Mrs. Ngozi stood before him, waiting in breathless silence to see if the billionaire's son would choose the path of honor or the path of fear. As the heavy silence hung over the massive corporate office, Mofe slowly stepped forward, his eyes filling with a warm, genuine softness that completely washed away the fear in Adanna's heart. He did not run away, nor did he deny the life growing inside her. Instead, he took Adanna's trembling hands into his own and looked directly at Mrs. Ngozi, promising her with a sincere voice that he loved her daughter deeply and would stand by them as a real man should. Mrs. Ngozi let out a long, shaky breath she had been holding for hours, her shoulders dropping in immense relief as she saw the pure honesty in the young manager's face, realizing that this wealthy boy possessed a good and noble soul. Mofe knew that the very first thing he had to do was to introduce Adanna and her mother to his own family, so he courageously decided to take them straight to his father's grand estate that very evening to deliver the news together. They drove in his smooth, quiet car through the beautiful streets of Maitama, arriving at a giant mansion surrounded by high walls, armed security guards, and dazzling fountain lights that made the whole place look like a king's palace. They were led into a massive living room filled with expensive leather sofas, gold-framed paintings, and giant crystal chandeliers that cast a bright light over the 55-year-old billionaire, Chief Kola, who was sitting majestically in a carved wooden chair. Chief Kola looked up from his tablet with a sharp, piercing gaze, his face growing instantly cold and suspicious as he noticed the simple, traditional attire of Mrs. Ngozi and the blue school uniform of Adanna standing next to his proudly dressed son. Mofe took a deep breath, stepping forward to stand as a shield in front of the two women, and in a clear, respectful voice, he introduced Adanna as the woman he loved and announced that they were expecting a baby together. The billionaire's face turned from cold to an absolute mask of furious rage, his hands gripping the arms of his chair so tightly that his knuckles turned white as he stood up, his booming voice shaking the very walls of the room. Chief Kola shouted that his only son and the manager of his company had no right to bring shame upon the family name by getting a common fish seller's daughter pregnant, especially when he had already planned for Mofe to marry a wealthy lady from another high-class billionaire family. The angry billionaire looked down at Mrs. Ngozi with deep contempt, throwing harsh words across the room and accusing her of intentionally using her daughter to trap his wealthy son just to steal his family's hard-earned money. Adanna began to cry softly, hiding her face against Mofe's shoulder as the cruel words hurt her deeply, but Mrs. Ngozi refused to let her family's dignity be dragged through the mud. The brave single mother stepped forward, looking the powerful billionaire straight in his angry eyes, and in a loud, proud voice, she told him that her daughter was a decent, brilliant student at Abuja Preparatory School who did not need his billions because honest fish-selling money had raised her with pure manners and self-respect. Chief Kola laughed mockingly at her words, completely refusing to accept the unborn child as his grandchild, and he pointed a shaking finger at the grand exit doors of his mansion. He demanded that Mofe immediately throw the two women out of his life and forget all about the pregnancy if he wanted to remain a part of the family and keep his wealthy position. Mofe stood firmly between his father and the woman he loved, his heart breaking to see his father's extreme pride and complete lack of empathy for an innocent life and a hardworking mother. He looked around the grand mansion that he had lived in his entire life, realizing that all the gold, the cars, and the luxury meant absolutely nothing if he had to sacrifice his honor, his true love, and his own child just to keep them. Mofe looked back at his father and quietly but firmly stated that he would never abandon Adanna or his unborn baby for all the money in the world, which only made Chief Kola's face turn a darker shade of purple with uncontrollable fury. The billionaire walked over to his massive desk, picked up a set of corporate documents, and slammed them down with a loud bang, declaring that he would strip his son of his title, his cars, and his home immediately. Chief Kola gave an ultimatum, threatening to cut Mofe off from the family fortune if he stays with Adanna. The heavy threat echoed through the grand room like thunder, but instead of shaking with fear or begging for forgiveness, Mofe looked his furious father in the eye with a calm and peaceful face, reached into his pockets, and slowly placed his corporate car keys and his office ID card right on top of the mahogany desk. He turned around without saying another single word, took Adanna by her trembling hand while putting his other arm around Mrs. Ngozi's shoulders, and walked proudly out of the giant mansion, leaving behind the world of endless billions for a future that was completely unknown but filled with true love. The cold night air of Abuja hit them as the massive iron gates slammed shut behind them, but Mofe only smiled gently at Adanna, wiping her tears away and telling her that he had never felt more free or more happy in his entire life than he did at that very moment. They walked together to the main road to hail a regular yellow taxi, leaving the wealthy neighborhood of Maitama behind as they drove toward the humble, bustling area where Mrs. Ngozi lived, ready to start a completely new chapter of their lives from the very bottom. The small two-room house that Mrs. Ngozi owned was simple and lacked the shiny marble floors of Mofe's former home, but it was filled with warmth, love, and the sweet aroma of home-cooked food that made Mofe feel instantly welcomed and safe. Mofe quickly packed up his few personal clothes from his old life and officially moved into the humble neighborhood, determined to show everyone that he was not just a lazy rich boy who depended on his father's money to survive in this world. He woke up early every single morning alongside Mrs. Ngozi, abandoning his expensive designer suits for simple jeans and t-shirts, and he began to use his university business knowledge to help the family by looking for ways to expand the fish-selling business. Mofe went down to the noisy river docks with Mrs. Ngozi to negotiate directly with the wholesale fishermen, using his smart talking skills to get much better prices for the fresh fish, which allowed them to buy larger quantities and increase their daily profits significantly. With the extra money they started making from the improved fish business, Mofe helped Mrs. Ngozi rent a bigger, cleaner shop space in a better part of the market, and he even set up a clever home delivery service for wealthy families across Abuja who wanted fresh fish delivered straight to their doorsteps. Adanna watched her handsome fiancé work so hard under the hot sun without a single complaint, and her heart swelled with a deep, unconditional love and respect for him, because she knew very few billionaire sons would ever choose to sweat in a fish market just to protect their unborn child. Even though her pregnancy was growing bigger every day and making her body tired, Adanna remained incredibly resilient, waking up to study her books diligently so she could finish her final exams at Abuja Preparatory School with excellent grades. The neighbors in the area were completely amazed to see a former billionaire's son carrying heavy wooden crates of fish and smiling happily as he greeted everyone in the street, proving to the whole community that true love was far more powerful than pride and social status. As the months passed by rapidly, the bond between the three of them grew stronger than a thick iron chain, and their simple home became a place of constant laughter, prayers, and deep happiness that money could never buy. Mofe used his small personal savings to start a modest, independent consulting business on the side, helping local shop owners in Abuja manage their finances better, and slowly but surely, he began to earn his own honest money without depending on Chief Kola's empire. Adanna's belly grew round and beautiful, and every evening, Mofe would sit by her side on their simple wooden sofa, placing his hand gently on her stomach to feel the strong kicks of their baby, while Mrs. Ngozi cooked delicious vegetable soup in the kitchen. One rainy night, while the cool wind was blowing across the rooftops of Abuja and the streets were quiet, Adanna suddenly gasped softly and gripped Mofe's arm tightly as a sharp, sudden pain washed over her body. Adanna went into labor, and Mofe held her hand tightly in the hospital, completely disconnected from his father's wealth but richer in spirit than ever. The white walls of the simple hospital room in Abuja were filled with the sound of rain beating gently against the glass windows as Mofe stood firmly by Adanna's side, never letting go of her hand for even a single second, while she pushed with the last bit of her remaining strength. With one final, brave effort from Adanna, a loud, beautiful cry broke through the quiet room, and the doctor smiled warmly as he wrapped a healthy, lovely baby girl in a soft pink blanket and placed her gently onto her mother's chest. Tears of pure, unstoppable joy flowed down Adanna's and Mofe's cheeks as they looked at the beautiful miracle they had created together, while Mrs. Ngozi danced happily around the small hospital room, praising God with a loud voice for protecting her daughter and bringing this new blessing into their humble lives. They named the beautiful baby girl Oluchi, which means the beautiful work of God, and from that very day, the simple two-room house in the bustling neighborhood became brighter, warmer, and more filled with sweet baby laughter than it had ever been before. Mofe worked even harder at his independent business and his market partnerships to buy the best baby food and clothes, feeling a deep, magnificent pride because he was taking care of his family with his own sweat and honest labor. Meanwhile, on the other side of Abuja, inside his silent, echoing mansion that felt larger and emptier than ever before, Chief Kola sat alone at his long mahogany dining table, looking at the many empty chairs around him with a heavy, sorrowful heart. He had all the billions, the expensive cars, and the high-class friends in Nigeria, but he had no one to share his life with, and his grand house felt completely cold because his pride had driven away his only son, whom he secretly missed more than anything else in the world. One afternoon, one of his corporate drivers mentioned that he had seen Mofe smiling and working happily in the market area, and that a beautiful new grandchild had been born into the family, which made the billionaire's stubborn heart begin to crack with a deep sense of guilt and regret. Chief Kola could not sleep that night as he thought about his son choosing a life of hard work over luxury just to protect his family, and he realized that the fish seller's family possessed a beautiful, genuine love that all his billions could never buy. The next morning, the proud billionaire decided to swallow his massive pride, so he dressed in a simple native outfit, left his security guards behind, and drove himself quietly down to the humble, noisy neighborhood where his son now lived. When the big, shiny car pulled up outside Mrs. Ngozi's simple house, Mofe was sitting on a wooden bench outside, gently rocking baby Oluchi to sleep while Adanna and her mother were busy preparing food inside the house. Mofe looked up in complete amazement as his father stepped out of the car, his stern face now looking soft and tired, with eyes that were filled with silent pleas for forgiveness as he walked slowly toward his son. Chief Kola looked down at the beautiful, sleeping baby girl in Mofe's arms, and a sudden wave of deep emotion washed over him, causing tears to well up in his eyes as he realized how much beautiful joy he had almost missed because of his foolish arrogance. Mrs. Ngozi and Adanna stepped out of the house upon hearing the car door slam, and instead of shouting or showing anger toward the man who had insulted them, they welcomed him with kind, respectful smiles, showing the true nobility of their hearts. Chief Kola looked at Mrs. Ngozi with deep humility, openly apologizing for his past cruel words, and thanking her for teaching his son the true meaning of love, hard work, and family responsibility. The billionaire happily embraced his son, Adanna, and their beautiful baby girl, officially accepting Adanna as his true daughter-in-law and declaring that their small family was the greatest fortune he had ever known. Chief Kola insisted on using his vast wealth to buy a beautiful new estate where they could all live together happily, and he even helped Mrs. Ngozi expand her fish business into a massive wholesale company that supplied fresh seafood to the biggest supermarkets and hotels all over the city of Abuja. To celebrate this wonderful new beginning and the beautiful unity of their families, they organized a grand Thanksgiving party at the billionaire's mansion, inviting all the market women, the teachers from Abuja Preparatory School, and Mofe's business associates to share in their immense happiness. The entire family gathers for a grand celebration in Abuja, blending the world of the fish market and the billionaire mansion into one happy home. As the vibrant music faded into the warm Abuja night and the last of the celebratory guests waved goodbye, Mofe, Adanna, and Chief Kola sat together on the wide veranda of the grand estate, watching the silver moonlight reflect beautifully off the peaceful garden trees. The long journey through clashing worlds, painful tears, and deep sacrifices had finally brought them to a place of perfect peace, where the dignity of honest market labor and the responsibility of great wealth walked hand in hand with deep, mutual respect.